Hello. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Greg Swartz. I'm the big man half of the big man Dram. The Dram half is forthcoming momentarily. This will be full in a moment. But I haven't even opened the whiskey yet that I'm going to start with for reasons which we'll explain in a minute. But I'm really excited today to get to talk to Brendan Carty from Killowen Distillery because I was lucky enough to visit about 6-7 months ago, and I was really, really blown away by, well, pretty much everything that he was doing. And I would say they were doing, but it was just him when we were there. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So without further ado, please welcome. Hello, Brendan. Let me unmute you. There you go.
Greg, how you doing? Delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you. I'm taking a break from these because I'm traveling for the summer. And I had this opportunity to talk to you and I didn't want to miss it. And I wanted to make sure we did it before, because I'll start up a new series of these. The third series will start up in the end of August, but I wanted to talk to you right away.
Nice. So we're the grand finale.
Yeah.
Show.
So yeah, like I said at the introduction, I was just really, really fortunate to experience your world, your creative world, and I've become a big fan. As I'm not going to be able to do this with all the bottles I have here because I have 7 of them, but I've got 7 of them here. I got some of the I got the Pachin. I've got a couple of the bottles. So tell us a little bit about you and Killowen, if you can.
Yeah, so I suppose we started in this industry a few years ago. So it was Shane McCarthy, Liam Brogan, and myself. So we were 3 friends from university back in the day, and we moved to different parts of the world and done our own thing and came back to Ireland. And the guys were selling the quality Irish produce abroad. And I was basically over in Australia at the time, working as an architect in whiskey clubs. And loving whiskey and just saying, I need to start making Irish whiskey the way it should be made, in my opinion. And paying more attention to quality heritage and stuff like that. And I says, I'm just going to go home and start making a distillery. So with no massive financial backing and just instilled with knowledge of Irish whiskey past and without being backward, with a real contemporary ethos at the same time, we set up Killowen Distillery. At the time, Ireland's smallest distillery, still tiny. It hasn't grown. It's 10 meters by 10 meters. I don't know what that is in square footage. I think you multiply it by 3.
Yeah, 3.3, like 90. It's like 1,000 square feet.
So it's tiny, and it's got 3 rooms, and that's what we are. And since now we've actually got a little shed up the lane which we can put casks into. But basically, a lot of people here would probably know of Fionnán O'Connor, the historian, and a lot of his ethos crept in there too. And when I was in Australia, we had some, ethos from tiny farm distilleries like Belgrove Distillery, for instance, and that's what we are. We're a small distillery up in the mountain in the middle of the Mourne Mountains in County Down, overlooking the Irish Sea, this Highland maritime influence. And we're free to make whiskey the way it should be made. There are certain legislative rules about Irish whiskey that restrict us, and we're campaigning to change those. But overall, we're whiskey consumers ourselves, so we're making whiskey that we want to drink, and at the same time, that means we're making whiskey that whiskey consumers want to drink. Lovely pot still Irish whiskey, and we're trying to dismiss those old myths of Irish whiskey as well. Silly stuff like triple distillation for extra smoothness and non-peated, all the nonsense stuff that we hear a lot of. We're making real Irish whiskey, and we feel like we've an obligation to do so, and that's what we're doing. We bloody love whiskey, and that's the problem. Just
well, I feel like one of the things you're doing with so many expressions for such a small distillery, you've released, and virtually every release is a new expression, right? I mean, there's and you're kind of pushing the walls back of what Irish whiskey is, or back to where those walls used to be.
Yeah, you're right. And it's not a case of just constantly looking back. It's about embracing modern heritage too. And the word you used there is expression. The distillery has a personality of itself that might be an extension of my own and Shane and Liam's as well, and the place. In fact, it's an extension of the place. But the distillery expresses itself. When it wants to express itself, whether it's a brain fart with a wee tiny release here and there, or the big wonderful release, that's what happens. And it creates these lovely releases, and what we have to do is let it express itself.
Oh, that's very zen.
Yeah, no, that's what it is. It's a personality. The distillery has a personality, and if it's a bit bold, that's it. And when it creates some really lovely liquids, these things just happen.
I was watching a documentary the other day about the American band, the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And they were talking about improvisation. And I just love this phrase. The bass player said, when you get it just right, the music is playing the band, not the band playing the music.
I can totally identify that. Definitely. Everyone's saying, commending me for doing things, but it just happens. You have to work with the ingredients that are available, the equipment that we have, the location, the people who are there at hand. Like, we're a very small team. We got 3 full-time staff, and sometimes we get a lot of help coming in, helping us out here and there. And with that, we make a lot of noise. It's
yeah.
But basically, the thing that I'm missing out on here is the people who support us, because without them, spreading the word, we don't have paid advertising, we don't have marketing. We just have really good people that are our family, that follow us and support us at events. Just real cool guys around the world that hang out with us and love to talk and chat, and understand us. That's it.
And I think that the word of mouth is there's such a good buzz about you, about the distillery, and people that are really paying attention at all to what's going on in the world of Irish whiskey. It's on the tip of a lot of tongues.
Yeah, it is. It's for those in the know, real whiskey anoraks, people on the that who want to taste quality produce. That's it. Mm.
So what I'd like to do is I'm going to read the specs on this whiskey, and then I'm going to open it and maybe let you talk about it a little bit. But this is an example of how every one of these is completely different. Mm-hmm. This is a peated whiskey. This is distilled August 19th and February in 2020, or August 19 and February 20. Cask is a tawny port cask, and it's 56.05 ABV. 3-year-old mixed mash bill.
That's it. Yeah. The reason why there's 2 dates there is because there were 2 smaller casks, 120-liter casks, that were vatted together and then put into a big tawny port cask. So one of them's a few months older than the other. And do you know what I'm going to try? Wow. This is my favorite release to date. I love this. Look at the color. Yeah,
I know. It's like pomegranate.
So this is up at the very top of our warehouse, and I was up there for 6 months, and I got to go up and try this. So I climbed up, health and safety out the window, and I cracked open the cask and I took a sample out of it. I nearly fell off the racking. I was like, this thing. I just looked at the color and I thought, I've ruined it. I thought I ruined it. I was like, this is overpowered. It's going to just taste like strawberry juice or something. So I took it back down anyway to the distillery. I walked down, held, and I cracked open the distillery and I just put it to my lips and I goes, jeez, it's all there. It's all still there. This is the thing about Killowen Distillate. I doubted myself and I shouldn't. Killowen is bold, it's vibrant, it's full body. It always shines through. And it's not just, that's what pot still whiskey is. It's bold, chewy, spicy. It just reeks of Irish heritage and everything that we stand for between everybody in this island. This is what we used to make. And we've shied away from it for far too long. It can stand up against the wettest tawny port cask for a period of time and still come out singing pot still whiskey. And so I was just like, this is going out now. So we got it out straight away, and that's it. A distillery exclusive. And we got it out as quick as we could and let everybody enjoy it.
Oh, it's lovely. It's it's such a, it's almost I get like cranberries.
Yeah.
Sort of tart berry, and
it's definitely
there's a sort of sweet creaminess to it as well.
Cream is great.
Yeah.
Cream comes from oats, and a massive thing that we've overlooked in Irish whiskey history for a long time was the oat. Oat used to be very prevalent in Irish mash bills, sometimes sitting around 30 or 40%. Again, all of this research into Irish whiskey mash bills is mostly down to the hard work efforts of Fionnán O'Connor, the author of A Glass Apart, now currently finishing off his PhD. And he's actually hiding out somewhere in America right now, staying away from Irish people so that he can finish it. And he's done a doctorate into this stuff. So all of these oats create lovely creamy notes. And whenever you malt them, you get custard notes. You know, and in my mind, the only thing better than cream is custard. And when you put that into whiskey, you know.
Oh, I've had a number of these whiskeys. I haven't had this one until right now, and that the mouthfeel on all of them is amazing. But on this, it's downright clean.
You just cracked this bottle open there now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't, and I was worried, but you were right. It twisted off easily.
Yeah,
because one of the first ones I got, I fought with for about 10 minutes. I got my knife out. And
sorry about that. It takes about an hour to open. We get a lot of complaints about our wax being too heavy, and then so we added 20% of a cheese wax, you know, the wax to put around cheese, into the wax mix, and just softens it slightly, so it still keeps the seal. But yeah,
it's just a testament to how much you really want it. I've seen there's loads of people commenting in the chat here. So I'm going to read some. There's not so many questions yet. Lots of people saying hello, but I do. We do have a comment, which is mixed mash bill equals non-GI compliant pot still, which I would love to have you elaborate on in a second, because I know a bit about that. But.
Yeah, this is the bit we tend not to talk about, because if somebody puts a dime in me or 50p in me, I just go non-stop talking about this. So I want to keep it very short, okay? Irish whiskey was the whiskey of choice around the world for a long time. You're talking a couple of centuries, okay? With the partition of Ireland, with Ireland becoming its own state, the British Empire basically had an economic war with Ireland at the time, and Ireland was unable to trade Irish whiskey with the rest of the British Empire. There's a lot of generalizations here, but you have to bear with me. Our main market afterwards was America, and with Prohibition, Irish whiskey fell to the wayside. After Prohibition, the Irish mob were selling terrible hooch. The Kennedys and all these guys selling terrible hooch with Irish whiskey names and making a lot of money. And people were literally dying in the streets drinking terrible booze. So they didn't want to drink Irish whiskey anymore. Irish whiskey was just surviving for a period of time, and it reinvented itself with a conglomerate and with three myths. And basically, that one, Irish whiskey is smooth. Number, it's that it's not peated, and the last one, that is triple distilled. But the reality of pot still Irish whiskey, when it was the whiskey of choice, and you remember this was before Scotch single malt came on the scene. Scotch single malt was not a thing at the time on the worldwide frame. It was there, but Irish whiskey was the whiskey of choice. Even amongst the British Navy, it was Irish whiskey they were drinking. Pot still Irish whiskey. There was 30% of it was like oats and maybe rye and wheat. And nowadays, the legislation allows for 5% oats, rye and wheat. So you're basically taking away 20% of flavor. Oats doesn't just add creaminess. It's oil. It's like cooking with oil. It's like cooking with olive oil or eating pizza without oil. Do you know what I mean? Oil holds on to flavor in your palate for longer, and that's why we like foods that aren't good for us. So the more oil you get into a whiskey, the more it holds on to flavor, spice, and we call it pot still spice in Ireland. Pot still spice comes from the unmalted barley or from the rye or the wheat, which tastes like sourdough bread in the background. So whenever you increase that from 5% to 30%, which we've done here, you get a wonderful whiskey. So we can't call this pot still whiskey, and we don't, rightfully, because the legislation says so. We're not trying to break the law here. The last time we spoke about this, well, on the internet, the Irish Whiskey Association reported us to DEARFA in London, who reported us to the HMRC in Glasgow, who reported us to the local authorities in Newry, and there was this long-term investigation which cost us a lot of money and stress, which is bad camaraderie in the whiskey industry. So we are not calling this single pot still. So that's the idea. This is actually just Irish whiskey. So yeah, and we got our GI inspections there a couple of weeks ago, and everything's all good because this is called Irish whiskey. But if it had been a couple hundred years ago, it would have been pot still Irish whiskey, pure pot still.
Yeah, I knew that story a bit, and and I think it's fascinating. It's amazing to me where the sort of industry has been able to regulate itself in such a way that it's kind of put real ankle weights on people trying to do things that are pushing the limits or being creative.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose it gives us a space in which to maneuver and to celebrate and talk. But in fairness, the industry is that, someone's gone like this and they've seen, right, the wind's starting to change here. And the industry is starting to talk and move and think about changing the industry. But it's slow, and it's far too slow. And there has been pushback in the past. I don't know what's going to happen now in the future, but it should have changed before now. We need to change the law here. You have to change it in Ireland, and it has to go through public consultation. Then it has to go to Europe as well and get changed there as well. So, and Brussels, as brilliant as they are, they're very much into their bureaucracy. So things take forever. Very few distilleries are doing what Killowen are doing. We were basically hedging our bets. We're putting all our effort into making pot still whiskey that can't be called pot still whiskey. That's an expensive bloody risk, you know. So we've got understanding friends involved with us, you know. So,
well, I think you guys have done it really intelligently, because that's made you more sought after, not less. Not, you know what I mean? You're not. If you were trying to convince a real sort of casual punter that's just going to buy a bottle in an airport or something, they're not going to ever spend enough time to figure that all out.
Yeah.
But I think that the fan base you have gets it and celebrates it.
So you have to, that's it. You have to basically talk to the whiskey geeks and the nerds like ourselves who appreciate whiskey history and whiskey quality. And then the other side of it is grow that base. It's a big education piece. So you have to try and educate the public without being too negative. The other side of it then is liquid on lips. Doesn't matter what it's called. If it tastes good, you love it. So that's the good thing about it. So there's an awful lot of trade shows. There's an awful lot of getting on the ground, you know, pouring whiskey down people's mouths. We're actually going to Texas now in a few weeks to do the same. So it is, yeah, that's it. But you're talking about that fan base. That's like, and those supporters of ours. Without them, we'd be nothing, you know. And they have manifested themselves into a group of real quality people who all know each other and talk amongst each other. And without them, we'd be nothing. And that's it. We're so grateful. They come from whiskey clubs. Where are those guys as well, you know? So we know who they are, we know what they think, and we're basically the same. We're just the same people. We all love whiskey.
Well, you know, our film benefited from those same people. You know, I always tell people our film, we had a plan to release our film in a very traditional independent documentary way, go to film festivals, promote it. And we got into a film festival, Seattle Film Festival, on Monday, and the Seattle Film Festival got canceled on a Tuesday because of COVID. And then we kind of had to adjust, and we were like, oh, you know what? We're going to reach out to the whiskey fabric because we're part of that. And we spent years being part of that. We know people. And so that's the word of mouth we developed was through whiskey clubs as well. And, you know,
I think so. But even your efforts, I have to commend you there. Isla whiskey probably rocketed about 50%. I think the Scottish government should probably pay you about 100 billion just for your efforts in your movie. The Water of Life movie is brilliant, you know. It was great. Well done.
Well, I'm doing some research for another film I'm trying to make. And I just came across a stat the other day that said Isla produces £4.80 in tax revenue for every £1 it gets. So it's a huge boon to the Scottish government that doesn't see the return it should get.
Yeah, it's really good for an island community because island communities in Scotland and Ireland really struggle, and I think Ireland's a good success story, you know, for the people there, their language, their culture, and that it's wonderful to see, you know. So that's great news. You know, whiskey is such an important industry.
I can't get over this. I've never smelled or tasted a whiskey quite like this before.
It's funky. So you got your peat smoke, you got your pot still spice, and then you got your summer fruits. Port finishes are dodgy. I have a lot of port finishes, and I have the bottles. I just opened them, and now they're sitting up in the attic. Like, I'm not going to go near that again for a few years, or maybe have a party. But see, when you've peat with port, you're guaranteed to get up there. And even sometimes it's not great, but yeah. Peat and port is always port and whiskey is a risk. Peat and port is much less a risk. And whenever you get it right, it just works. We pulled this out early because of the color, and then when we tasted it, we're just like, we couldn't believe it. You know, it was great.
I've had some port finished whiskeys that are just swamped. You know, they're just swamped in the port. And here's someone. We all know them. Eugene says, we saw Water of Life in Edmonton. I was just talking to the Dram Fine podcast ladies yesterday, and they said that they met you when you were there, Brendan.
Yeah, they're good guys. They're
Yeah.
big fans of Matt Berry, which is always a good thing.
We
He's
were
an
actually
English
talking
comedian.
about him. Yeah, no, because he's the guy who edited our film. He edits promos for FX, so he edits what we do in the shadows promos, and they were very excited about.
Oh, that's great! This is brilliant. This we should do a whole other show on this. We just go on forever.
So Mark Pruitt asked a question. I'm going to put it up. It's a wordy one. I'll read it, but I'm going to put it up. And he also he apologized afterwards that his autocorrect spelled Killowen wrong. I recently spent time in Ireland on holiday. It's an amazing country, and they certainly love whiskey. I find Irish whiskey to be good, but also that brands are safe in tradition. How is Killowen challenging the status quo? How is your whiskey remarkable in the landscape?
Yeah. Well, we don't just own the space that we work in. There's other brands that are really interested in the style that we're doing as well. And there's some new distilleries that have just set up and they're working hard in that direction as well. There's other cool distilleries out there that we really like. Acklandville and Bowan, who are close by as well. So, and then there's Blackwater Distillery down in the bottom of Ireland who we partner with, who share the same ethos. There's other members of their Irish Whiskey Guild who are a trade body here, and they're working in this direction as well. You can't forget about them. So there is a move into this direction now. There's a lot of respect for this line of thought. Who I keep harping back to him, but Ireland should celebrate him more. It's Fionnán O'Connor, and there's other people there who have been crying in the wilderness for a long time beforehand. Willie Murphy and people who used to collect these ancient bottles of and very old bottles as well, almost century old bottles of Irish pot still and sharing them together. So we are changing the fabric. We're cracking the fabric. We're very vocal about it, and we're putting our best foot forward when we're doing it. We're not creating junk. Everything we do is done very well because we have basically a responsibility to make real Irish whiskey, real potstill Irish whiskey, good, really, really good. So it's essential, but it's not like we're being irresponsible because it has existed in the past. So yes, we're changing the industry, but we really are acknowledging its correct past in a way, And it's not about being backward looking as well, because we're still embracing contemporary methods. We're getting super funky with casks. We're being really excited and going for non-chill filtered whiskies straight from cask to bottle. If you're getting a bit of char in your bottle, that's fine. Fiber's good for you. And there's lots going on there.
I always like it when I have some, but this one doesn't appear to. But I'm always happy when I see a bit, and I definitely had some in one of the other Killowen bottles for sure.
We love the complaints. Yeah, people tend to write us and say, "But there's bits of your wax, your cap wax in my bottle. Can I have the money back?" Like, you don't deserve to own a bottle. Yes, we will return it. We will accept it gladly.
Wow, this whiskey is so unique and delicious. It's distracting me.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to talk a little bit about like your output, the size of the distillery. I saw John McDougall saying here that Killowen stills are 1,800 liters and use worm tub condensers. But can you talk a little bit about that and the size? And you said it when I was watching you live on Instagram the other day, and you said a really interesting stat about your output that I would like to.
Yeah. Well, the output is 3/4 of a cask a week. So you're talking, we do about 42 liters per still run. That's what we would yield. Now, we run our stills for 12-hour shifts. When I worked in another smaller distillery, the same size as us, they were running the stills for 6-hour shifts and getting twice the amount. So what we actually do is we run them much slower with fire. So we're using flame-fed stills. We're the first to bring that back into Ireland. And we use worm tub condensers as well, which is a very, very, Liam said flame-fed. Good man, Liam, co-founder there. And the thing about the flame, it creates a Maillard reaction, which is another wonderful thing, because it's when amino acids, basically proteins that are, the other parts of the grain, aside from sugar, sink to the bottom and they burn, and the yeast as well, yeast protein, and they burn with the sugars, residual sugars that aren't fermented. And there's a lot of non-fermentable sugars because of the inefficient way in which we ferment, and they burn together and create this caramelization. that we ends up caking to the bottom of the still. We end up scraping it off with a brush and power hosing it off sometimes bottom of our still. So the distillers are chocolate fed so definitely you need your calories when you're doing everything by hand in that place. And so with these two stills as well, the important thing is to mention here, Ian mentioned the still sizes, right? 1,000 litres and 800 litres. Those are small, right, for distilleries. Now, we only fill them, the first still we fill it by half, so it's only 500 litres filled. The rest is reflux. Reflux, for those of us who don't know, sorry to bore others who do, is the interaction between the vapour and the copper, and it condenses and drips back down, and then the steam keeps interacting with the copper. Copper gets thinner. Copper's brilliant because it turns sulfates into lovely smelling esters, because copper's wonderful. Therefore, you don't get fart tasting and smelling distillate and aromas coming off your spirit that you would get out of a stainless steel still, or if you run your stills too fast. So these real slow distillations are really important. And instead of getting the most out of your still that you can get, you half fill the wash still. So it's essentially running a 1,000 litre still as a 500 litre still, because we're far from greedy. And then the other still that we have is an 800 litre still, and we only fill it to 20%. 20% full, and all the rest of that is reflux. And you're talking about massive inefficiency. So by the time you're collecting spirit out of that thing, half your head's cut is gone to the atmosphere around you, and the rest. And so it's your losses are tremendous, but the quality is wonderful. So if you're playing the efficiency game, yeah, go for it. But your spirit shouldn't be drank and shouldn't be released for years to come. But if you're playing the Killowen game, your long-term game is a disaster. Your short-term game is a disaster. But you got this wonderful whiskey to celebrate in the meantime. So yeah. If you want to invest in Killowen, it's a bad idea.
That's quite a sales pitch.
It is. And people ask you why does the whiskey maybe cost a bit more. That's why.
I'm going to have another dram here. This is the rye single cask, distilled May 2019. PN. This is the rye.
Right.
Right. 59.3.
Is this the Capuchin?
Yeah, this is the Capuchin. I should have said that. Sorry.
This was done. My God, this is the one for the Capuchin. This was the one released by Ian Garrett, aka John McDougall, whiskey enthusiast madman. So this stuff was released. We call this the paddle breaker. So we know how badly and low yielding our whiskies are. So we made a rye whiskey. And rye, it just stuck together. It just caked together. And it was meant to be 100% rye. And the paddles, we do everything.
Uh-oh.
You
froze for a second there.
We're
you said
back
we do
now anyway.
Yeah, you said we do everything by hand.
Yeah, and we were mixing with both paddles. So we snapped both paddles. And then we ended up just using 2x4 to try and lift this stuff up. But it was like glue. It was just sitting at the bottom. And we'd done this for a couple of weeks. And so we had to add something to the rye to make it become more buoyant in the water. So what we did is we added, a few percent of peated oats and peated barley in there. And it made it more buoyant and broke it up. And then we were able to mix it up. And the yield was dreadful. It was a very small yield. But the spirit was the best thing in the world. It was wonderful. So it was ever so slightly peated. And so what we did was then we put it into Pinot Noir casks, these beautiful Pinot Noir casks that we thought were, but it became incredibly overpowered by wood spice and red wine, and it ruined it. So after a couple of months, we took it out and we let it sit in ex-bourbon or ex-rye cask, for the next 3 years. And after 3 years, it just became wonderful stuff. So it went through a crazy life of up and down. And we created what we thought was our favourite rye whiskey. And Ian, they wanted something special for the Capuchin charity, which is basically a homeless charity. Homelessness in Dublin, it isn't exploding just as fast as it is in San Francisco, but it's a massive problem here as well with the opioids and cost of living from the recession past. It's tragic, and this charity are doing God's work. And so we thought we were happy to donate this cask, or not donate it, sorry, we obviously got some of our costs covered, but the money made from this cask was tremendous, and yeah, it's a brilliant charity. But here, the whiskey's great too. So
the whiskey is great. It's absolutely great, and this is well, until today, this might have been my favorite Killowen I've tried to date, but now that may have changed.
You're the port now.
You know, it's like choosing your favorite child. So, you know, but it's
yeah.
But I really like this cask, this rye, because it's so, well, both of these actually, but are so far removed from what you think of. If someone tells you they've had Irish whiskey and they're like, oh, I've had Bushmills and Jameson and Paddy, you know, then like this is so completely a different stratosphere altogether. It's just, and I'm really blown away by it, and I really like I would have never thought to put rye and Pinot Noir casks, but it totally absolutely works.
Yeah, it's a trick I learned from Belgrove Distillery in Tasmania. They're a tiny wee farm distillery, wonderful, smaller than Killowen actually, and that's what I learned. That it works really well. The only difference was their Pinot Noir casks were originally American bourbon casks, whereas our Pinot Noir casks were originally French Limousin. So a European wood and American wood. American wood's lovely vanilla and caramel notes. European wood is very heavy on the clove and wood spice, and it can overpower very quickly. So that was the difference. That was a hard lesson learned.
You know what's amazing to me is I live in California, and I have relatives in Northern California, and I was just in Napa 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Look, I've not done any kind of study on this. This is just me visually observing this. I don't feel like there's an insane demand for American wine casks yet, because you can buy used casks in Napa for, you know, like gardening use and, you know, decorative use from wineries for like, you know, $50, $60, like really, and I feel like they're not overly used, and I just don't. I've never looked into why, but they don't. I know Blanton, no, not Blanton's.
Yeah, I think you just touched on something wonderful here. Do you want to not tell that to any more Irish distilleries, and we'll just keep that?
Yeah, absolutely.
But in fairness, Two Stacks Irish whiskey are killing it. They're getting a lot of ice wine casks, and they're brilliant. And nobody knows who their source is. So I think that I might just get a whole container and we'll share it out between Killowen and Two Stacks of lovely American wine casks. That's a brilliant idea. That's great. Well, thank you for.
I mean, I could be completely wrong, you know, but it's, you know, because I know what's the Bladnoch, the Scotch brand. They do some American wine cask stuff, because I think that the guy who owns it is an American. And I think he used to work in the wine industry. But I haven't done any. I'm just, you know, this is just half hearsay.
Hey, this is why you need this. All of your best ideas come to you when you're drinking. It's just true. It always tells you on a Friday.
You know, it's funny. Mark Pruitt had written again and asked, you know, what sets you apart. But before I even got around to asking you the question, David Cummings really nicely, kind of succinctly put this. Wild fermentation, flame-fired stills, everything done by hand, Sharpies on the label.
Dave knows the crack. If anybody looks to check out his writings, you know, he writes in another Water of Life, but not Water of Life film, but Water of Life. So as well. So yeah, the Sharpies on the label, that was because we were forced to remove some information. We're big into transparency. Only a few years ago, transparency wasn't big in the Irish whiskey industry, so we kind of trailblazed that. And it's becoming more commonplace now amongst reputable brands, but unfortunately, it's not still commonplace. There's still a lot of Irish whiskies out there that have no provenance and explanation for who they are, where they're from. So there was a bit of pushback, and I think in this particular instance, when we fought back, the only thing that we had to remove was the age in small print on the back of our label of the older blend components in our whiskies, and we reluctantly agreed to that, not without a little bit of fight, but we protested then and continued to print same labels and proudly scribble it out to highlight the issues in legislation. And again, that was another time that we were reported by a certain institution claiming to protect the Irish whiskey industry.
Do you know Bruichladdich does a terroir code on the back of the bottles, and you can go read about the entire, all the transparency about the cask. And so
it's good.
This is kind of they got in a fight with the Scotch Whisky Association about some stuff they were putting on there. It would basically be a PDF that pops up, and it had all this stuff at the age of every cask that went into the vatting, and they had to remove it. So what they did is sort of to thumb their nose at them. They made it look like a sort of redacted CIA document. Rather than remove the document, they just put big black bars through sections and made no comment on it, which I kind of like.
I've actually got a book that we were thinking of publishing, and it's from that same organization with all of the we've issued lots of freedom of information requests to different government, and we've got lots of them from a different group. And I feel like just because sometimes they aren't all blacked out, some of the names of these people, and it's a bit pathetic. So I was thinking of publishing it because it's free. If we keep getting pushed, we will publish it. But I was thinking of just doing that in scribble. It's freely accessible information now, so we're well within our rights to do it. We've got a lot of legal opinion on the matter. But yeah, fair play to Bruichladdich. Good guys, It's lovely stuff. We were actually in Jim's house last year. Jim, he's a wonderful guy. Now retired. He lives next door to the distillery.
Yeah.
What a hero, What a hero. He was your friend in the last movie as well.
Yeah. And I was just on Isla and was just with him. And yesterday he got an MBE yesterday.
Proper order.
And he's just about an hour ago, his wife sent me a photo of him in his kilt.
Oh, very good. Nice one. That's good.
So I have a question for you. Because I don't honestly know the differentiation between this bottle and this bottle. I mean, I don't mean what the whiskey is. I mean the shape of the bottle and the design. Like what puts one in one bottle and one in the other? Because these are the sort of main bottles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are own distillate. The other bottle, that what you have in your hand there now is us sourcing whiskey. So if you look at the back of the label, it tells you it might not say Cooley Distillery, or it might not say Great Northern Distillery. It might say GND or Cooley, but at the time before we had permission from the distilleries, we had to say County Louth. So we're in County Down, and that's County Louth. So at the time of the age of that whiskey, there was no other distillery in County Louth. So if you're a whiskey enthusiast, you could sit and go, right, Distillery County Louth, Cooley. So that's why this is Cooley whiskey. So what you're holding in your hand there now is it's gorgeous. It's coconut rum. So we had a coconut rum cask and put the whiskey in it and aged it in coconut rum for over a year. And it just turned out divine. Lovely, subtle, soft, mellow notes of coconut. And this is rum and raisin being the sherry influence. So we pulled back on the sherry influence to try and let the coconut come to the front of this one. And it just turned out lovely,
Yeah, I love the whiskey. I've already put a pretty nice dent in it, and I just got it 2 days ago.
Yeah. Are you getting the coconut notes?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me, like I get notes. I have a tendency to sometimes compare whiskeys to candy, and I get, I don't know if you have them there or not. Almond Joy.
No, but we've plenty of almond candies. So
it's almond, coconuts, and dark chocolate.
Lovely.
And there's also, but also bits of that raisin, that kind of dark chocolatey raisin from the sherry. Yeah, it's really lovely. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about, I know it looks to me like there's a lot of the people who are watching are not in the U.S., but I think a bunch are. And a lot of people have written to me, including a few people privately wrote to me today saying, where can I buy this whiskey? I went to Binny's and it wasn't there. So, I want to tell people where they can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It actually works well, Greg, because there's today is when Folsom Wines are doing their launch as well. So,
okay, so that's I'm going to post that. I'm going to post that here in the chat, the link that you sent me to Folsom Wines. And now Folsom Wines will do shipping, but only obviously the Americans here will know what I mean, to the states that allow shipping. I'm putting it on the screen, but that's no one's going to hand copy that down. That's That's a gigantic word
Yeah,
salad.
you can get.
But I put it in the
put
chat.
it out. Yeah, and we put it out as well on our social medias and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's in the chat. You can click on it and copy it. Folsom are great, but they're also able to ship to outside of the States as well. So anybody in Ireland who wants to taste any of the American, USA exclusive releases, plus all of those, the bonded experimental series, which we absolutely knew and love as well, with the ink scribbling out the information, we released those in America as well. So any of the ones that are discontinued in Ireland, you can now get them in America, but there's only a few of them left, and some of them might be sold out. I think one of them has only got like 1 or 2 bottles left in it. Like the tequila cask, for instance, on the Hungarian oak, I've only got 1 or 2 bottles left, but the rest they might have a handful. But they're actually doing a really good deal over there right now, because we know Americans love a good deal, and the Killowen culture are basically the heroes that are the core of the Killowen ethos. They're now a closed group, so they're closed. They don't let anybody else in. People get in, and people are trying to join every day, and they just laugh amongst themselves in the admin because they're not letting anybody else in. They just keep kicking people out. But they've agreed to let 10 more people in, and the only way they can get in is if they buy 10 bottles out of Folsom. So that proves that they're Killowen drinkers, and then they can join the cult. So, but not only did they do that, Killowen's going to pay for the cult card, which your own ID Killowen cult card. We're going to pay for, and we're going to send you a T-shirt, and we'll send you a bottle of Navy Strength gin as well. So we'll post all this stuff to anybody who buys 10 bottles in America. So that's a nice bit of collaboration from the Killowen cult.
Yeah, that's great. And so people, if anyone goes to the Folsom Wines website, folsomwinespirits.com, there's the long link is there, but if you just go to Folsom Wine Spirits and search for Killowen, there's a number of different expressions on their website. I looked just before we went on. And in case anyone is in the Sacramento area, that's where they're based, right?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, it's very good.
It's funny. California is so huge that I've been to Sacramento once. I've lived in California for more than 20 years. I've been to Sacramento one time.
Sometimes you have to check yourself going, is that in California as well? Like, oh my God, we're looking forward to getting there.
So here we have another question for you. Well, a couple. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the questions now. But what is the wackiest cask? Oh, that we don't know about. I didn't even finish reading that before I put. So you're gonna spill some news here if you want to.
With Baron Tool, oh, there's stuff coming down the line that's been put in the most adored casks we have are the Irish oak casks that were failed. So these were casks that I planed by hand myself, cut them up, planed them, chose which ones. In fairness, I was working with a timber frame and a timber man in Downpatrick, and we were checking through. He was educating me about how wood works. And then we shipped them to the cooperage and then made them and sent them back. And we had only 5 casks made. And it was felled and naturally dried for 20 years. And these trees were from the ancient seat of the O'Neills, just north of Loughney, on a castle there, Rory's Castle. And the absolute historical significance of these casks and this wood. We were in conversations with a few different people in Islay, even Bricklady at one stage, just to see if somebody could work with us. But I'm not going to talk anymore. This is the future, and I probably said too much. Sorry, I shouldn't have talked about that. But this is going to be something wonderful that we want to work with. Again, there's some mad stuff we've done. Like we've distilled gin ingredients inside the still and created mad concoctions as well. It's sitting in a cask as well. We tasted it there a couple of months ago. It's completely mental. So it's a bit like Geneva, if you like. So it's not going to be Baron Tool. But yeah, we do weird and wonderful, funky experiments that we don't think will ever see the light of day, and maybe they will. So those brain farts still do go on. Just don't tell Liam Brogan because he's the accountant.
So I should have asked you this before, but what does Baron Tool mean?
Baron Tool, if you were to translate it directly into English, things are often lost in translation, but the closest word you can get would be authentic or authenticity, but basically it means like the height of truth, or true to origin, if you like. And so it's about dismissing certain things in the Irish whiskey industry and Irish whiskey, and bringing it back to what we see its core elements being. So such as mash bills, transparency, and then the modern contemporary ethos of it as well, which is non-diluted, non-chill filtered, real whiskey. That sort of full flavored. So it's the historical aspects followed by with contemporary ethos. That's what Baron Hill whiskey is. So it's reserved then for Killowen's own whiskey when it's released all the time after 3 years. So stuff that's actually born and reared in Killowen. But then again, we can also release bonded experimental stuff, bonded exclusive stuff that we're proud to put our name on, but we're very transparent about again in terms of where it comes from. Like the rum and raisin, for instance.
Yeah. Graham Fraser asked us if there was anywhere he could source bottles in Scotland.
Yeah, it depends where you are actually in Scotland. Obviously, we can ship to Scotland, so whenever there's a distillery exclusive from the website here, you can ship here. Any of the distributors in Northern Ireland can ship easily to Scotland as well. Thanks to the Northern Ireland Protocol, Brexit hasn't impacted us that much. So guys here at KWM Wines down the road from us and any of the other online retailers can ship to Scotland, no problem. There's if you want to taste some really funky Killowen stuff, you can taste some of the bulk can in the Pot Still in Glasgow. So get yourself down there as well. Everybody who knows Scotch whiskey and knows where Glasgow is knows where the Pot Still is. And then where you can get loads of Killowen as well, there's a good Irish bar. Oh my God, Malone's in Glasgow as well. It's up like a little alleyway in Malone's. It's full of Killowen. Get in there and just indulge. The guys are great supporters of us in there. So yeah, outside of that, you can't sell snow to the Eskimos. There's plenty of whiskey in Scotland, So it's
yeah. I was just in the Pot Still last week, and
great spot. Staff brilliant. They know their stuff.
Absolutely. So, what are you going to start doing regular releases in the U.S. now? Because a lot of people have asked me. I realize the U.S. is not one market; it's like 50 markets, which is
it's tough. It's tough. So where were they? A crowd called High Road Spirits, and they're wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful. So they are our importer, and they have distributors around the whole of the US. So we're going to take a wee trip to Texas now in a couple of weeks. Just have a conversation with some of the guys there. I know America's a three-tier system. Texas has basically got an extra tier. You don't argue with Texas, and that's fine. So unfortunately, that pushes the price of Killowen up an extra 30%. But we're going to give it a whack anyway. Well, we're in Boston, we're in New York, we're in Minnesota. We're in Delaware. We're in Delaware, not even indirectly into Delaware. San Francisco as well. So we're in Kentucky. We're not in Ohio. It's another difficult one to get into, but it doesn't stop the cool people. We have a lot of really cool guys in Ohio who just go for a party source in Kentucky and drive back again. So those are the places we're in. So thanks to High Road Spirits, they do have a good cover. Folsom as well can ship all around the US, and Everson Rice as well done a great job there recently too. So if you're in the US, you can get it. So what we do is we give love to the US by giving them special casks. So we give them. I think you got a couple of them recently as well. You probably got the white cognac cask from Everson Rice. Like that's a remarkable little cask. Yeah. And the thing about America is you have to go with American sizes. So we're not big enough to go up to the 700, 750 size, but we can do 375 mil. And unfortunately, it pushes the price up per bottle. But this cask here that you've just cracked live was our favorite cask. Shane, Liam, and myself, this was our favorite cask, and we were so reluctant to let it leave. But we like our importers so much that we give it to them. This cask blew us away. Like all the clones have a DNA, and all of them. The one you tasted, the peated port is a big mighty cask. This one is quite soft and subtle, but at the same time, it's got so much going on. The complexity is wonderful. so the white cognac it's just brilliant. So this is single pot still. This isn't one of the old school mash bills. This is a modern mash bill, but we've squeezed as much in there as legally possible with a little sprinkle of rye, a little sprinkle of wheat and oat, maximising that 5% that's allowed. The rest of it being 30% unmalted barley and the rest being malted barley. And we just loved it. It was a real delight to work with. The only thing was we meant to keep back a few cases for ourselves. We only kept back 5 bottles, and I know it's such, but I adored it. So when we go out to Texas, we're allowed to talk about it, and we're being given a couple of bottles to let people taste it. So I can't wait to get another little drop of it. It's just lovely.
It really is. And I had some of this before because I got a sample from you, and so I'm not tasting this for the first time. I'm tasting this bottle for the first time, but
no, I know what you mean.
So single pot still, April 2019, 200-liter cognac cask, 61% ABV. Wow.
61 is pretty. It doesn't come across as 61.
No, not at all.
It's just so mellow and complex. And that's the other thing, that oats, the more oil you have in a whiskey, the less it takes away the alcohol burn.
Look at the color differential in these 3 whiskeys. It's like a flag. It's like a German flag or a Belgian flag.
There's a lot going on
there. Wow, that's amazing. I know that I was asked specifically about Chicago, and so that's why, because Binny's is in Chicago, and
we're in Chicago as well. I'll tell the guys to reach out to us, and we'll let them know, because we spent some time in Chicago.
So there's a friend of the film who I just was in Scotland with, Lynn Schatz. She might be watching today. I think she said she was going to be. I don't know, but she's the one who wrote to me earlier and said she wanted to figure out how to get a bottle, and she went to Binny's. But I think I mentioned to you, Brendan, when I first met you, that I have a friend. I used to live in Dublin, and I have a friend who is a barley farmer in Kinsale, and he just wrote here, Kevin Kiley, and asked me to please repost that link. So I will do so.
Good man, Kevin. Lost it.
There we go.
You've a good following here, Craig. Like 4 Leaf Whiskey, Stacey Stearns, and all's on here, and there's a lot of people just jumping in. It's great to see. I'm only taking a look at some of the comments now, and
they're going by fast and furious, and it's hard to keep up with at times. And there's loads of people watching who aren't even commenting. That's always the case, So
lovely.
But I one question I wanted to ask you is: do you guys, is your barley, your grain, because you're not just making whiskey with barley? Is it your grain all Irish sourced?
That's a really good question. We live in a globalized economy, and we don't want to be insular. And Ireland lies within the European Union, I believe, firmly in free trade and in interaction. European project's wonderful. It's a bit like the United States of America. It was a mad idea at one stage. It works. It really works. Hairy as it is, it works well. It's a wonderful place, as is the EU. So most of our grain comes from Ireland. The odd time we have to get in a little bit of barley from Scotland, but we're talking about 90% of our stuff comes from Ireland. The wheat, whenever we get in wheat doesn't grow well in Ireland at all. So a little bit of the wheat might have to come from Belgium. And you're talking 1/14 of a mash bill then if we are using wheat. But the rye was entirely grown in Ireland, and all of our malt at the moment is entirely grown in Dundalk. The oats are grown probably around about 500 meters, sometimes a kilometer away, is where the oats are grown. So you're talking a very small place. On Dundalk, you're talking just across Carniford Loch. As the crow flies, you're talking about 1 to 2 miles. We disclose that on the insert card. The insert card that comes with our boxes will say that sometimes, a little bit of the grain would come from basically the wheat is the hard one. I know a lot of farmers around here who've grown wheat this last few years, and because of global warming, summers are getting wetter and wetter, and the wheat just gets wider and wider and wider, more and more juicy, and then it just bursts and it just goes black, and it becomes really good animal feed. But it's heartbreaking for farmers, who want to sell it as a prize crop for distilling or for bread or whatever. It's a tough one. But if you want to add a bit of wheat in, you got to get it somewhere else. And some people can be extremely Puritan and that's not what we are. We're just realists. And but yeah, the vast majority of it is Irish.
It's really interesting because so many of the grains. I was just talking to someone about barley and how it grows in Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. And he said, yeah, well, this was a distiller I was talking to. This is Matt Hoffman from Westland, and he said, yeah, barley grows in Pennsylvania, but the barley you want to distill doesn't grow there because it's too humid. Yeah, the barley swells with the humidity, and he said, you want that's why the best barley in North America grows along the sort of Canadian border, like Washington, Oregon, North Dakota, and because where I'm from is has an almost Florida level of humidity. So
exactly, yeah, perfect for corn probably.
yeah. Well, feed corn, big time feed corn, and sweet corn's good there too, but and tobacco.
Oh, is that right? Yeah,
chewing tobacco.
We need to get into tobacco. I think I want to hang out with some cigar people, learn cigars, and maybe do a cigar pairing with Killowen. I think that's the next project. Maybe we'll find some of those guys in Texas.
Well, it's funny because that tawny port, that actually, I almost said it's almost like a cigar malt, like a whiskey that would pair so well with. I don't smoke cigars, but I mean, I have, and
Yeah, as would the Capuchin cask, big time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one more question for you. I know we've been talking for almost an hour, but we've yet to mention one thing. People, you mentioned the Party Source earlier, by the way, and then I saw some other people here commenting on the Party Source. So the Party Source is owned by the same guy who owns New Riff.
Oh wait,
yeah. And New Riff is literally across the parking lot from Party Source. Like, they built a distillery there because they owned the parking lot was so much bigger than they needed that they were like, well, we have a piece of land, let's just do this, and they're literally across the, maybe 100 meters from each other.
Yeah, that's genius. Absolute genius. Yeah.
So I want to talk about Pachin a little bit.
Yes.
And I've got 3 of these here, but they're all different. But people are just going to have to trust me. I don't want to drop one, but I've got.
Yeah, they're all different.
Yeah. So well, first of all, assuming there's a bunch of people watching who don't even know what that is, can you give us a quick primer on what that is?
Yeah, I have a little 1.5-year-old now, so I had to get rid of all my booze.
Uh-oh.
And some up the top shop on the right. I jumped out there. So yeah, Pachin is whiskey's mummy. Pachin is whiskey that is not the same age as whiskey, but Pachin can include a little bit of fruits. The blurred lines between Pachin and whiskey. Pachin was made illegal in 1661. There was a period in Ireland known as the Pachin Wars, where Pachin was the only thing that we had whenever people weren't allowed to own businesses. The native people weren't allowed to use their own language, own businesses or anything. And Pachin, I suppose, became a source of identity. It was also made in the glens of Antrim up until very recently. I have a lovely video from the RUC at the time. It's a wonderful piece of history, and showing the Pachin men being chased by the police, which is it's brilliant, and then them destroying their liquid. Pachin's a part of the lore of the place, and it's regional as well. It's like language changes from place to place. Some people had bad Pachin, some people had good Pachin, and it's a part of our landscape. Pachin's our national drink. We've a shared culinary experience with Scotland being whiskey, but the Scotch don't have Pachin, and we do. It's also protected. It's got its own GI in Europe as well. There's Pachin being made now in different parts of the world: Canada, Isle of Man, America. Kings County Distillery made a Pachin as well. But it's only Ireland who can make Irish Pachin. So we didn't trademark it properly. We just protected Irish Pachin. But it can be gorgeous. You're allowed to age it for 10 weeks. A lot of us here know what the best bar in the world is. So the Dead Rabbit in New York has been the best bar in the world a few times. And Killowen's Panger Pachin is on their menu at the moment. So if anybody's in New York, you need to go to the Dead Rabbit. You need to get an Irish coffee, and then you need to get the cocktail with the Killowen Pachin in it. So you're allowed to age Pachin for 10 weeks as well. And it's wonderful stuff. It's full of lore, it's full of it's full of tradition. And for me, poaching should include oats. You know, any of the best poaching in Ireland had basically around 50% oats and 50% malted barley as well. So you need to be getting oats in there just to really give some of that creaminess and character out. One thing that poaching isn't, it's not made from potatoes. That's a myth. I think it came out of modern culture and the Great Escape. Poaching predates the potato. The potato came from the Americas, came to Ireland a few hundred years ago. Poaching's older than that. But yeah, it's those are just some of the core things with poaching. It's a big word. The last thing is the relationship between poaching and whiskey is the same as that between mezcal and tequila. So mezcal was the underdog for a while, and now it's really cool and really interesting. And we think that's the way poaching should be as well. So poaching is now. So if you want to hear more about it, if there's anywhere online that says poaching now, it's an independent group down in Dublin. Just check it out. It's a part of a poaching festival as well. That's where the real spirit enthusiasts. That's where they hang out. And yeah, it's great.
Well, I really got the sense. Look, I didn't. Like I said, I used to live in Dublin, but that was 25 years ago, and I never had poaching at all then. Maybe I did once, but someone's unlabeled private made, but I seem to think I did. But now, there's a real energy behind it that I could see, and it was almost has a sort of a patriotic quality to it. Like you just said, like, this is ours. This is who we are. This is who we were hundreds of years ago. And there's a sort of pride that kind of surrounds it that is, kind of infectious.
It does. It belongs to the Ireland's kind of divided in a way too sometimes. It belongs to both the big traditions in Ireland too. As I said, it was made in the Mourne Mountains here and in the Glens of Antrim as well. So it did exist here for a long time amongst everybody, So although it's patriotic, there's a certain sense of responsibility almost rather than patriotic. It's like it's part of everybody's history here. It's a wonderful thing. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows somebody who made it. Everybody from an agricultural background went to a poaching maker for an ailment. It's great.
I may have mentioned this to you when we first met, but I don't think I did. I read there's a book that came out maybe 3 years ago now called This Is Happiness. It's an Irish novel about Niall Williams, and it's about the electrification of the last towns in Clare in the 50s.
Brilliant.
And it's a novel. It's a novel, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book and really, really funny. And there's an anecdote in it, and I've seen him interviewed where he said it was based on a true story about it. There was an old man who lived in the town near where his grandparents lived, and he made poaching. But he was very, very superstitious, and all the kids had convinced him that if he would leave a certain amount of poaching at this fairy ring outside the town, that he would never have any bad luck. But the kids were just taking the poaching, and the old man put it there every month or whatever, throughout this guy's childhood. Yeah.
Lovely. I better give that a read.
It's one of the best novels I've read in the last 5 or 10 years. I absolutely loved the book. It was a beautiful book.
The science of poaching is completely intertwined, or fucha, as we say in Ireland, with mythology and with culture and heritage, and the idea of the fairies. People might snigger and laugh at a fairy, but there's not one man in Ireland who cut down a fairy tree for fear of being cursed. It'd have to be a very brave person to do it, and that's to this day. But whenever you talk about the science of distillation, the first little bit is the most purest form of alcohol. It might be a type of alcohol called methanol, but that's the bit that would make you blind or kill you or worse, a real slow liver poison and death. So what you did, you thought that was the purest drop. It smelled the most wonderful. So what they did is they left it out for the fairies. And if anybody dared drink it, the fairies would curse you with a terrible hangover, permanent blindness, or liver failure. And this is how mythology existed from Greek times, right? We always associated things that we couldn't explain by science with mythology. So it's that deep, and it should be respected as such. In fact, there's a little book I have here. I have a little book. So Fanon gave me it. It's called By the Smoke and the Smell, written, of course, by a wonderful guy from San Francisco, very influential in the space of, of cocktails and that. And that comes from a line about poaching. By the smoke and the smell, you could greatly tell that there's a poaching still close by. So he spent a bit of time living in Northern Ireland, and he was up in Port Rushen and Belfast and Port Stewart, and he's well aware of the great poaching tradition that existed in this part of the island as well. He didn't delve into it enough because there wasn't enough information for him at the time. But I think if he was to come back and write that book again, he would write it in a completely different light, because poaching is cool now. Poaching is now, and it's fascinating stuff. Like it really is. I wonder where it is.
I love that story because I'm always fascinated by how, mythology and science, or the practical and the mythic line, how they serve each other. And the guy we were talking about earlier, Jay Arisman from New Riff.
Yeah.
He told me this really fascinating story. So original American distillers were mostly in Pennsylvania. There was a thing called the Whiskey Rebellion, and a lot of them left and they went to Kentucky, because Kentucky was basically where they could keep far away from, any kind of government oversight. It was very rural and very wilderness at the time. But what I didn't know, and he said, look, the reason corn became the main ingredient of bourbon was because corn grows well in Kentucky. But he said also there were no railroads yet, and all of the rivers flowed west and south. There was no way to get corn to market in the east. He said, so you had to do something with it in sight. And then what they would do is they would distill it, and they put it in barrels and send it down the Mississippi to New Orleans. And he said, and they had to stamp on the cask which county it came from. And the cask said Bourbon County. And he said, and they quickly realized, people in New Orleans realized the best ones were the ones that said bourbon on them. And that's why it started to become called bourbon. And he said it was all because the rivers flowed that direction and there was no railroad. So there was no way to get your corn to market. And I've always loved that kind of stuff. These sort of little...
Oh, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. There's a lovely word in the Irish language called dinchanchus, and that's that idea. It's the lower of place. And it's going to become a key word in a series of Killowen Baron Jewels going forward. That idea of celebration of place and why place is so important. And like, if you travel around Ireland, if you go from here to Larne, or from here to Kilkeel, or from here to South Armagh, there's about, I don't know how many different accents that there are, and they're all connected to the place. And these accents change. It's a hyper-regional place. And if you look at the USA, it's so hyper-regional as well. But the whiskies change with those regions.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's just those different accents of poaching that existed all around the place, are wonderful. Same as shiners in America and stuff. And Kentucky has that reputation for a reason, It's great stuff.
There's a friend of mine was in Scotland was telling me, he said, if you drive 100 miles in any direction in America, nothing changes. But if you drive 100 miles, in Britain or in Ireland, you're going to go through 5 accents, and sandwiches are going to have 3 different names.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. There's what we call wheaten bread, and if you go for 20 minutes in that direction, they call it brown bread, and the brown bread up here is a completely different thing. It's not worth talking about. So it's
Someone just said to me in Glasgow the other day, I was ordering breakfast, and they said, "Do you want a sausage roll or a roll and sausage?" I think either one's fine.
Yeah, they eat my.
Sorry, you broke up again.
Yeah, that's all right. I was just like Glaswegians for eating battered Mars bars. So,
oh yeah,
I was just laying low for a while.
Someone just asked me yesterday where they should go in Scotland to get batter fried haggis, and I was like, "Well, I don't think you have to go too far to get it. I don't know that it's something you need to search out." But
haggis is wonderful. It really is.
Here you go. There's been a load of comments. I don't know Connor. Do you?
Yeah, I know Connor well. Yeah.
Oh, great. In Ireland, you can move 20 miles down the road, live there for 30 years, and still be regarded as a blow-in.
You're right.
That's
20 miles. 20 miles. No, 1 mile, 2 miles. You'd be blowing 1 mile, 2 miles. It's insane. You're better moving 20 miles. You're better moving 20 miles. It means you get to skip a couple of parishes.
I don't know that that's true in California, but it's true in Pennsylvania. My aunt moved from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1968, and her neighbors still think of her as new. And those two cities are maybe 20 miles apart.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can identify.
Well, Well, listen, this has been amazing, Brendan. I'm going to have another dram. I'm done. My day of my work is done.
I think in the last,
I don't have to drive anywhere.
You probably broke a record for cracking open the most bottles of Killowen in a 24-hour period. I think you cracked 4 or 5 bottles of different things.
I did 3 while we've been talking. This one was already open.
Good man. Good man. But
so
I didn't. You only received it the other day. It's only been in your ownership for a few days.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
40-hour period.
I had to do my research before we spoke. No, I've opened these 3, and while we've been talking, the Belgian flag,
unbelievable.
These 3, and
the other. So that's 4.
And then the other one was already open. Yeah, I'm going to have a 4th dram here. Yeah. But look, when I come back to Ireland, I want to come bring a camera and shoot some more stuff with you, and I'm just blown away by what you're doing and love it, and I hope other people here that have been watching this will get to try it. And if anyone sees this and the chat's no longer available or something, just write to me, or put something on the film's Facebook page, and I'll see it, and I'll send you links.
Definitely, yeah. No, we really appreciate it. As I say, it's a real honor to get on your show, Greg. Like you've got you're a very talented man. You've a brilliant reputation, quite rightfully so. Your previous movies that you've made, the Water of Life's been fantastic. So thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Check it out.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine no one's. Well, no, maybe not, because there's a lot of new people watching today. So yeah, please go check out our film if you like it. Wateroflifefilm.com. It'll take you where you need to be. But we've got a comment here from Lile Kai.
Lily,
so
Lily.
August, Austin, Texas, August 11th, teaming up with Drammers Austin. If anyone is interested in tasting these special drams, wow, that's awesome.
Exactly. So we're looking out for Texan friends. So apparently Texas means friends in the local dialect as well. So there you go. No better reason. So if anybody wants to reach out, do.
Love the Drammers. I'm a member of the LA Drammers Club. So if you find yourself in LA,
is it Drammers? So it's Charlie Prince's Drammers group that we're hooking up with?
What? She said Drammers Austin.
Oh, no way. So there you go, Charlie. Good man. I think I'm a member of New York Drammers. I don't know, and Ireland Drammers as well. So
yeah, he's it's like he creates more chapters than I can keep up with.
Exactly. I don't know if the Irish one's up and running yet, but yeah.
Well, look, I'm really, really creatively sparked by you and by Irish whiskey right now in general, and loving what's going on, and I want to come back there with it. Like I said, I'm not shy about it. I want to make more films about whiskey around the world. I wanted. Hey, Fanon O'Connor just said, if you manage to get out to LA Drammers, Brendan, I'll crawl out from hiding. So that now, see,
I'm just giving away his location.
I know, and I kind of already knew where he was, but I didn't officially know it.
He's giving away his location to loads of people.
But I'll drag you out. I'll drag you out from hiding if you like, Fanon. And I'm only here for 1 more week. But yeah, anyway, I want to make a film about Irish whiskey. I make no bones about it. That's where my camera wants to go next, and my crew, and we all love it and want to do it. I just got to put together the financing package to do it. So
good stuff. Well, we'll put you up anyway. We'll be delighted to have you and your crew. So,
it'll be fun. Okay. All right.
Stuff.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching. I know it's late for you guys in Ireland right now, so go have a good Friday night. What's left of it. My Friday night began early.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks everybody for stopping by.
Thanks, Brendan. Cheers, everyone.
Bye. Islam.